today with Dynamic Change at KPCALP in Petaluma, I wanted to talk about, put some psychological insight into the identity of a mother, and also understanding how the mom can still have her own sense of self. I have been a mother. I have worked in mental health for 7 years with kids and teens, and they're my favorite people, if I'm honest. And I want to share how when we get to a point, it is so helpful to, as a mom, and even just as a parent, the dads too, to really allow yourself to step forward from being a parent. You know, when they leave their house and they get to be adult age, very young adult age, and late teens, there's such a big shift, and I think it can be emotionally challenging, and also sometimes it can really bring about the level of emptiness that can be felt, can feel a little bit like depression, and just kind of where is my life path at this point. Like, that was really how they were identifying with their life and really what they put all their energy into. So there's a couple things I want to speak to. I will do more shows that are geared towards parenting tips for different ages, because I think it is just so helpful to have as many ideas at your disposal. And so before I move into kind of the empty nester phase of being a parent, briefly I want to touch on raising kids today within our society, because with the drug situations that are out there, with the severity of the effect of the drugs, there's a couple tools that I came across, and the most brilliant tool was not my idea, but it was so brilliant that I always want to share it with everyone that is either a parent themselves, they, you know, their best friend is a parent, or they have a grandchild, or anybody. It's just so useful. And a brilliant doctor that I adore came up with this idea. So when you're raising the kids, grandchildren, niece, nephew, whatever, a really helpful tool is once they get to be about middle school age, because unfortunately that's where it happens young, that they get exposure to that kind of peer pressure and those ideas. So a way for you to really be empowered and to also empower your child, I think a really helpful tool that I heard from this doctor is to, and now you can do it either way. You could either say you're going to do it or actually do it, but it's drug testing the kid in a way where it's not like we want to accuse our kids of, you know, I know you're going to act out in this way, but you can say, sit down with your kid once they get to be about that age when they start to bump up against that. And even if your kid is in a really great circle of kids and you just feel like it's never going to come up, there's all these other elements. There's just people they bump into. So it can be the most together kid, but these issues are just in the world. And I love to have the kids as safe as possible. It's very important to me. As a self-defense instructor, I've worked with kids all the way down to the age of 6, and on how to handle bullying and how to work with really complex emotional behaviors. And I often find that when I teach those self-defense classes, that with the children, I ask them, is there anything that has been happening that you don't know how to handle with the other kids, where it's uncomfortable or it's aggressive or it feels really mean? And let's talk about it. Let's give you some options of how you could get some help, how you could stand up for yourself, have a voice, handle it, and you'll be amazed. Their eyes just light up and they're like, oh, someone asked me, because they really do need this input. And it can really help with their stress level. And if you have a kid that's, very sensitive or is having anxiety, sometimes they just need tools. So, and again, if you ever need information on me and what I do, and my website is dynamicchange.wellness.com. And so when you could sit them down at that age, middle school age, and say, I adore you, I know you make such good choices, and I trust you, but I do want to talk about, peer pressure and things that can come up in the world. And oftentimes, I think these issues around sexuality and drugs, those two things, I think within our society are very just glamorized too much. They are presented as part of our culture so young, and if they are seeing it, whether it's on television or the phone, however, and as much as you want to protect your kid from it, and I really did as a mom, I also knew that it was part of the world. And so I did it as much as I could to protect my child from the concepts that I felt were not the healthiest, but also be present with them to navigate what did come up, because it came up no matter what I did, and no matter what you do, it will at some point come up. So if you prepare it as early as possible and sit them down and say, I love you, I trust you, I know you're really together and always, striving to put your best foot forward. And I want to talk to you about peer pressure is a thing that does come up, because the element that I really want to address is that our kids, because of our culture, our societal culture around kind of media and sexuality and things like that, bring these issues up before they are emotionally ready to be able to make a really rooted within themselves present emotional judgment around these issues. And that's always been my particular concern, is that I would love to see within our culture and our society more emotional education and intelligence, and also letting them know that the benefits of waiting with sexuality, waiting with exploration of these issues, and also that they're very educated around drugs, to be honest with you, because these days with the fentanyl, it is a very intense topic, and I think it can be overwhelming for parents and produce a lot of fear. And so I want to empower you, okay? And so there's a couple tips I want to give out, and again, I'll do more shows that are specifically just for this. But because I think they're so important and so helpful, I'm going to repeat them at times throughout my shows, and even if I'm doing a related topic. So you can sit down that child and just say, the drugs are really important to understand, that a lot of the drugs out there, even something that seems like a gentle drug or not a big deal, often can be laced with, fentanyl or something else. And so that has been one of the trends that within that arena that you have to look out for. So the kids need to understand, even if there's like, oh, I just want to try something, it's no big deal, it's not a hardcore drug, that oftentimes they may have a hardcore drug put in there a little bit, and that's the danger. So a way to give your kid an out and also give yourself some peace of mind that I think is really powerful is to drug test them. And I didn't know this when I was dealing with my teen. I didn't know that. I did find out later, and it was a helpful tool, and my kid thanked me because it gave them an out. So when they're dealing with their friends, and because there's always going to be a friend or someone they know, even if it's casually, that is really experimenting and bumping up against this, or really partying hard, or whatever it is. And so if you drug test them, you can buy these kits, at CVS or online, Amazon has them, and also breathalyzers. It's not a lot of money, and if it's something that saves you from something that was unfortunate for experience that your kid had to go through, I think it's so powerful to have a tool and just sit them down and say, this is something I'm going to start doing because I know it's going to come up, and I want to educate you on the drugs and educate them on fentanyl. Look it up. It's scary. I'm sorry. It's not fun. But the thing is, what is empowering is the knowledge. And the kids need to know. They can't be, they're so young, they're immature. So that, if they're just blindly going into a situation, assuming it's not that big of a deal, then, that is, they're not prepared. So what I love to empower parents and kids about is to understand what the drugs are out there, and where they're, the source of where they come from is the most important thing, and the reasons it's good to abstain. I just love it if they just never did anything. But I think once they get to be teenagers, realistically, it is rare that they're not going to bump up against this. So we want them to be prepared. We want them to understand that there are, the full effects of substances. There's like a weed psychosis for marijuana that you can get. Sometimes if there's a child that is really sensitive and is prone to anxiety, because the marijuana these days, and I see nothing wrong. I think it has some really benefits for cancer, and like things have a place, right? Certain things have a place, but they're also much stronger. So even that particular substance is been developed to be so much more potent. So they need to understand that if they're taking something that is way more potent, I was born in the 70s, and it's just, everything's different now. So those substances that even, were seen that maybe they weren't the strongest thing out there are way a lot stronger than they were years and years ago. So the kids need to know that if they have that particular chemistry makeup within themselves, that it can actually trigger a psychosis. And so there's certain things like that I had no idea about, that I had to educate myself on. And I think it's really helpful as parents that we tell our kids, so because there's these particular substances out there, they can have these effects. I love you. I'm here for you all the time. But I think it's really helpful for us to start doing this, every couple of months, or whatever you feel. And if you ever feel like your kid starts to feel really off, that's a good time to test them, because it's really tricky to navigate, the puberty and the emotions and the flow. And sometimes you're just like, oh man, they're just going through puberty, and everything's just, I don't even know what to do anymore. But that is a really good time to do a breathalyzer, do drug tests, because sometimes they don't look like they've been doing anything. And you can't separate the behavior out. So if you tell your kid this, we're going to just start doing this, maybe once a month, every couple of months or whatever. And if you have friends that are really exploring, you might want to educate them on what we've been learning about the substances, because when you empower one kid, and this works, I did this with my kid, it really, really worked. And they were aware and open with this information with their friends. And I think it was extremely helpful in helping even other kids outside of my home have more safety around these issues. So talking about that, and then just telling them, this way, I can make sure you're safe, We can always be talking about it and checking in. And also, if someone tries to peer pressure you into trying something, you can tell them, my parents drug test me and are very strict. I'll be grounded for life. And I always told my kid, I adore my kid, and I said, if you ever need an out with one of your friends or a peer or something, you can always make me the bad guy. And it really helped my kid. And I was a bad guy a lot. And I was okay with that. I was like, just tell them I'm so strict or I'm mean, or you can say whatever you need to say to be able to say no to that situation. And so giving them that out is so huge. They need an out because, our society is pretty flashy. In my opinion, things are going pretty fast at times. And we're not able to emotionally catch up with the behavior, with consequences, with the whole movement of it. And so this is a really powerful tool for safety. So again, educating yourself and your kid is so, even though it may be uncomfortable, is way better than something happening where they could really be affected in a way that's harmful and traumatic. So I say go for the uncomfortable situation first and empower yourself and your kid. And I think it's so helpful. And so drug testing, using a breathalyzer, and it really helps separate when their behavior gets, you're just not sure how to read it. It's such a helpful tool. And so that's really helpful. And then it's also really helpful with consent. One of the things I also work with as a self-defense instructor and working with kids in mental health and is that I think a lot of times when substances are involved, that's when intimacy issues come up for the first time. And I think we've all had enough life experience to know that it's so tricky to navigate those issues as it is, but especially if you're not fully present and there's been, partying involved and substances and everything, then it's often not the, like, later on, something that felt really emotionally positive because of, you don't feel present, able to really decide what you're comfortable with, have the boundaries that feel safe for your body, whatever it is. It's really, in my opinion, a really big deal for the teens and the kids, and I adore the kids. So anyway, that's my information on that. And again, I'll do more shows on that. But what I want to talk about as my larger topic today is the identity of a mom and even the dad. I think women, it might be a stronger issue for women only because I think it's biologically, we're kind of geared towards that. But I really want to talk about parents in general, how much we invest our identity, our energy into being parents, and how that can become something that can be really challenging when the kid grows up. And then all of a sudden the kid's gone and you're like, what do I do with myself? And sometimes depression comes up, they feel so empty. And we want to model for our kids how to really being able to enjoy life and be present with themselves. And if we are not doing it for ourselves, it just doesn't give that model as much as it could. And also, if you don't fill your own cup energetically, your energy level, your health and everything, what state are you going to be in? Are you going to feel all used up when your kid leaves home and you'll be like, wow, I never took care of myself, I just took care of the kids? We really want to have wellness. When I do my wellness coaching with people, I'm really talking about the different layers of it and always looking at it even in my own life, like, what else can I do to fill my own cup? It is so important, and it will give us longevity in our lives. It'll give us, excellent mental health. We will have healthier bodies, because the stress will wear down your body. And so it's just so important to look at these things. So I think a really healthy way to look at raising our kids, and we can also, even as grandparents, we can help our kids with modeling some of this, or if sometimes there's even enough flow within the communication to even talk to our kids about this and everything. We can deal with it at any age, but talking about empowering the kid as much as possible, because if the child has been empowered as they were growing up at any age, it makes a huge difference. And then you have to trust yourself that whatever comes up, the kid's going to put their best foot forward as a young adult to handle it, and that you can tell them, I'm here for you. Or if you ever want to find additional support, and not just me, because the more help they have, the more educated they are on certain topics in life, get them a network of help and offer it and say, I'm here for you, and I love you and adore you, but I also know how brilliant you are. Some kids want to do it on their own. I adore my kid, powerhouse, their whole life a powerhouse. And they really, as they became a teen, wanted to do everything on their own. And it didn't work well if I tried to, override that. So what I decided to do was to always continue to empower them and say, if you need me, I'm here. I always got your back. But, giving them resources, and they were so brilliant, they would find their own resources. My kid's just amazing person. And I was very fortunate. But it was really interesting when I was coming to the terms of switching gears as my kid became an adult. It was very interesting. I was like, wow, you have to really let them go. And that can be a really complex and emotionally a little bit challenging. For some people, it's very challenging. And so I want to speak to empowering the kid as much as possible. So when they become a teenager, giving them mental health resources is always good. However you want to do it, whether they're in counseling, there's sometimes groups for their age group, or have them in martial arts, something that helps them get emotional intelligence and gets them in touch with their own personal power is so, I don't know if there's anything else that is going to help them as much as getting in touch with their own inner strength. And I think martial arts for boys and girls is amazing. Even just a self-defense class, or a kickboxing class, something that allows them to feel, strong within themselves. Physical fitness, all those things, it will help with their confidence, their boundaries, their assertiveness, their ability to have their own voice when it's really important. And it teaches them kind of discipline and to respect power. I think that's huge, because we all want to not, when we get in touch with our power, find a balanced way to express it and take care of ourselves, and also feel confident enough to feel like we don't have to override other people or try to control them. So powerful. So any kind of self-defense, and parents, I always love to encourage parents to do it with their kids. And I did that with my own kid, because I've always loved martial arts and have studied it off and on. I would take martial arts with my own kid. You can do it with your grandchild, or just take a course, like a self-defense course, something where they get a little taste of that, or a lot of it if they get into it. I think can just empower them in ways you never would have been able to accomplish sometimes other ways. And so there's that. And sometimes, nowadays the kids are so into finding the, the TED Talk or something, someone speaking on through the gadgets, and that's great. But, maybe finding something that brushes on these topics and saying, here, this is what I found really balanced and emotionally intelligent and had some really good points. If you ever want me to watch something that you're listening to, and just really try to be present with your kid. And the reason I'm talking about this with the parent identity, when we're parenting and how we are able to move out of this role and release this role as our kids become adults, is the more complete and the more satisfied you are with having done the best you could to really empower your kid, will allow you to step out of that role more comfortably later. When you want to just be like, now I'm going to concentrate on me, and I'll adore my kid, I'll see my kid as much as possible, we'll visit, it'll all be great. But to be able to feel like, okay, I did my job. I did it to the best of my ability. It doesn't have to be perfect. No one is ever going to parent, it's impossible. Parenting is about mistakes and learning, and then doing the best you can to handle whatever comes up, because all of us are learning through every moment, and every kid is different. And I really want to say that because I work a lot with kids on the spectrum, and very spirited kids, and they're my favorite people, but they are a lot more challenging to be present with, just because they're so different, so dynamic, and so quirky, and you're like, woo, this is not like any of the old school stuff. And so you have to keep adjusting and keep growing within yourself to be able to understand and not feel frustrated, if I want to be honest, because it's so challenging. There's no book that's going to explain it, right? So it's like advanced parenting, in my opinion. And so you just have to be able to keep adjusting. And so one of the things that I want to say to everybody is that when the child, with your grandparent, whether you're a parent or you're an auntie, or this is, you're like the godparent, whatever, we all have a lot of connection with kids, and it takes, the village, the community, everyone helping. It's too big of a job for one person, in my opinion, and it is so helpful having as the most enriched group of people as possible. And so when we're dealing with people that are very dynamic, on the spectrum, or very sensitive, emotionally intelligent, and maybe they just process differently. So being on the spectrum is basically saying they're neuroatypical, so they're not neurotypical, and it means they process differently, and they're usually very intelligent, but they're different. Their perceptions are going to be different. When they're on the spectrum, they have a little bit of like the autism flavors, or a lot of it, and so they feel at such a higher level, and subtle things that someone that's not processing in that way is a big deal to them. So for what would be like sensory overload for them is something that wouldn't be the same for someone that doesn't have those experiences. And also, I've noticed with the mind, so the way they perceive information in their mind, so it's not just what they're feeling. Their minds are so brilliant, and they will often have their own way of relating that is also different. So it's also the thinking, the processing within the mind is different. So it's not just sensory issues, that they feel everything and they have big feelings, and maybe, if the tag on the back of their shirt isn't cut off and it rubs them all day, they're gonna, lose it by the end of the day. And these are real examples. I've worked with a lot of kids, and so, but their minds are different, and they're brilliant. And I really think these minds are very helpful for our society to grow, because we, anytime we think in new creative ways, there can be so much healing and benefit from them. Okay, so when you're dealing with someone that's very different, I talk about listening with your whole body. So when you're dealing with a teen or a kid and they start bringing these concepts to you where you're like, oh, wow, this is not how I think, maybe it's really against the grain, with me, and some of it you can still shape, right? And you can say, no, we're not doing that. But there are going to be situations where the child is going to do whatever they're going to do. If you think of when you were a teenager, there might have been moments where your parents were like, would not have wanted you to do something, but you're going to do it, right? Or you're going to believe something totally different. These things come up, and that's okay. But what I found really useful was listening with my whole body. This is what I did with my kid, and it really paid off, because when things came up that were a big contrast to my beliefs or feelings or an issue, something that was, they wanted to approach in a different way, I would tell them, explain it to me. Why is this important to you? And I wouldn't make a decision or have a strong reaction. I would say, look, okay, this is what I agree with. This is what I really need to think about. I need some time. So I would put a container around safety issues or anything really huge and say, this is not, certain things have to be this way. But I want to hear you. So I want you to keep telling me, and then we're going to deal with these other arenas of it that maybe we can find a little bit of compromise, but I need time. And I did that over and over and over. And the more my child would talk to me and I would feel it in my body, what they were feeling and thinking, it helps so much, because as the world keeps changing, we need to find a way to still flow with it, where it isn't so frustrating and scary and overwhelming. And so putting a safe container on the big issues, and then later on, just saying, I need time to process that, and give yourself time, research it, think about it, feel it, decide, and then keep revisiting it over and over and over with that kind of format was amazingly helpful. So if you do this kind of being present with your kid, really working with them, empowering them to be safe around substances, around intimacy, and just keep showing up as much as you can, your child will be really empowered by the time they become a young adult. And then at that point, you can look at yourself and say, what am I doing for my own wellness at this point? And again, you're listening to Dynamic Change on KPCA-LP in Petaluma, a free-range radio and TV station. My name is Michelle Love. And today, as a wellness coach, I am talking about how parents, their self-identity, how we can find ourselves after our kids have grown up and that they're moving into the late teen years and becoming young adults. So and it doesn't matter where you start empowering your kid, just keep moving forward in a way where you're supporting them to be empowered, to know how to find resources when they need an answer in case they're not going to come to you for that particular answer. Just constantly say, this is a great, wow, brilliant way to find information on this particular topic, and constantly help them find their footing to move forward, and tell them, I'm here for you, but I know how brilliant you are. And you don't have to be perfect. I just want to make sure you're safe. I love you. And then keep giving yourself some wellness to fill your cup. Because your kid's gonna pull away. When they become young adults and late teens, they really want to do their own thing. And it can be painful as a parent. It can be complex and challenging. So it's the more you show them that you can take care of yourself, and you trust them to be their own person, you trust them to move into their strength and their power as an adult, you're going to help them feel more confident. And you're going to model for them that it is important to take care of yourself, that something can be complete, because we don't want these codependent, enmeshed things. I think we all have probably a little bit of that. It's hard to avoid, nothing's going to be perfect, but we want them to be complete within themselves. And as a parent, we want to be complete. And we don't want to be doing codependent patterns where we are trying to do too much for them, because that doesn't empower them. It takes away from that opportunity for them to learn how to be powerful. And the more they do that, when it's appropriate at certain ages, what it does is it's going to help them be stronger as they move forward and be more adept. Because the thing is, if you can do it when your kid is still going to lean towards you at times, it's fantastic, because once they get to be a certain age, they're probably not going to lean in when they need help as much. So I think it's really helpful to just give them that opportunity to really separate ourselves as people, and just keep telling them how much you love them, keep spending time with them, and say, what can I help you with? If you come up with something, have a question, just let me know. But there's like this emotional boundary that needs to happen when we release the kid to grow up into adulthood, that I think can be really tricky. And so I think the healthy way to do that is to not judge ourselves. I think a really, really big emotional challenge that can come up is, as parents, feeling guilty that they failed, didn't do everything they could have done, or I really blew it there or here or there. And really, being a parent is about often failing and then learning, because life is so unpredictable. Every kid's going to be different. You can never anticipate the stuff that's going to come up. And the best you can do to survive all that is really be in touch with yourself, self-humor. Just be humorous as much as you can, and just keep rolling with it. Because life, that's really the definition of life, is just that it's a learning process. So don't hang yourself or give yourself a hard time or carry guilt, because none of that is emotionally being as in your power as possible. It's beating yourself up, which wears yourself down, which doesn't help you, doesn't help your mental health, doesn't help your well-being, your physical health, and it creates weird, funky dynamics emotionally. And then your kid can feel guilty. Everyone feels guilty. Guilt, I don't think is good for your soul. Like, let it go. So the more we can just let it go and just work on feeling satisfied, really tune into yourself and say, I did everything I could. And no matter what went down, I know I did everything I could. And kids are so resilient. They are so amazing. And they will blow your mind how strong they can be. So if you just be kind to yourself, be gentle to yourself, and just feel good about showing up. And whatever happens, all that matters is we show up. All that matters is that the kid knows how much we love them. And often, for me, parenting, anytime I knew I could have done better in that moment, I usually would just own it. I would just tell my kid, just so you know, that was all my stuff right there and nothing to do with you. And I'm just going to go work on that stuff, whether I was frustrated or whatever it was. And just letting them know it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to say you've made a mistake, and that you can try again, that you can tell the people you love, I just made not the best choice in that moment. I need to figure that out, and show them how powerful it is to be able to own that, to say that, to not make it the end of the world, and just say, I'm just going to go take a break and then I'll try again later, and sorry for that, is so powerful, because we have to learn how to be gentle with ourselves, right? And have some understanding for ourselves. And that helps our children realize when they become adults that it's not the end of the world when they feel like they failed or that it was unsuccessful, because those are opportunities for us to grow inside and to learn. But if we are beating ourselves up, feeling guilty, putting ourselves down within our mind, it holds you back from your personal power and how much you can grow from that situation. So just presenting that. So I think those issues come up as, as parents. When our kids are growing up, I think there is this like residue often of how we judged ourselves as parents. And so I think it's really powerful to make a list of what you did right. I loved my kid all the time. I made it a point to make sure we did homework together. I made it a point to read to my kid all the time. I took us on trips when we could. I threw the ball with my kid and played with them. And I showed up to their games. Like, make a list, because being a parent is such a big job. It's amazing. And just really honor what you did right. And work on just letting anything else that you would normally judge yourself for go. And then also getting to terms with that. So I think regularly doing a list. If it has been a challenge for you, making that list, do it all the time, and then just sit, like bask in it. Like make the list and then sit down, do some deep breathing, and just be present with how awesome you were with all those things you were able to do. Because there's always going to be stuff that we wanted to do better. But that's not how life is. We have to really honor what we were able to do. And when you are basking in that good feeling, in that positivity, in that love and appreciation for yourself, you are going to heal. You are going to just increase your energy level, your well-being, your health. And then from there, you can move forward in, okay, I feel more complete now. So feeling that that sense of, now I feel complete. And then you trust your kid to handle themselves. So there's that letting go. I did an amazing job. This empowered my kid, and I did such a good job. They are going to handle things really well. So it's like there's this completion on the emotional body and how we think and how we feel that needs to happen to let go. And it doesn't mean that we're not connected to our kids anymore. It just means we're letting go of kind of that layer of feeling responsible. And because I think that's a huge emotional, kind of energetic, thought process, everything. Like, we're so engaged as parents. We're so on. It's like survival, right? Or I'm raising this person to survive and be in their power. It's like such a big deal that, where is the psychological, emotional completion within the self to where you can step away enough to then take care of yourself and allow them to take the steering wheel and know that they will come to you when they need help, know that they are competent enough to figure out all kinds of things, find help that they need. And I think it's psychologically and emotionally a really big process. And so my kid is 20 years old and I adore them. I was a foster parent I worked in mental health for 7 years with kids. I was a stepmom. I helped so many kids throughout my life. And I really, with looking at the emotional dynamics of this, is I think it's really important for us to find an emotional completion. And I think the way to do that is to feel good about the history of it and how it went down. And if there's anything you judge yourself on, anything you're like, if you tend to be hard on yourself, those kinds of things get in the way of your wellness, because guilt or feeling bad, beating yourself up, sometimes we have that, circulating deep within our psyche and our mind. That's going to hold you back from happiness and joy. So really making that list all the time of what you did right, and then send yourself some love. Just imagine feeling love in your heart for yourself. Sometimes I imagine just putting, some pink light circulating in my chest and really honoring my efforts, honoring what I did, honoring my intentions, what I did right. Make it so big. And the other stuff, just say, you know what? And we learned from all those things that felt imperfect. It made my kids strong, because you can't avoid things going down. There's no way. So the things that had to happen were lessons. I learned from it. My kid learned from it. It made us who we are in this moment, and we're so wonderful. So send that love to yourself. Make a list. Send that love to yourself. Send that love to your kid and to your connection as people. And then just visualize them being empowered in your mind. The way we hold people in our mind is so powerful. So you just keep seeing them as empowered allows you to feel a sense of well-being with the situation, of completion, of, okay, now I feel so good about how that ended up. I can now focus on me, or my marriage, or my relationship, or what I want to be doing. And really look at, what do I need to be doing for my health? And what do I need to be doing so I'm having fun and joy? Because the amount of energy it takes to be a parent, I think, takes up a huge chunk of our lives. Like your emotional, activity, your mental processes, and where your energy is going. So there's like this huge chunk that we've been operating on as a parent, and we're easing out of that. We need to not only give it some completion, so our kid can feel complete, I can feel complete, you still have that love connection, but that huge chunk of energy and time and focus can now direct it on your own well-being. Is so important, so powerful. So make sure you're exercising, eating well. What are you doing for your own longevity? Do you have some hobbies? Are you going back to date night with your partner? Are you enjoying life? Because I think being a parent can be such a big focus that when the kid is grown up, are we enjoying our lives? Have we been operating on a level of just doing for someone else? And, now how do we do for ourselves? I think that transition is huge. How do we do for ourselves? And so for moms, dads too, but I'm just speaking because I have the mom experience. But your identity, feel good about all the heart and effort that you put into the situation. Honor it. And you can do things like put your hand on your heart, a hand on your belly. Take some deep breaths. You can do this with me now. Let's take 3 deep breaths. Breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. Breathing in through the nose. Hold it for a count of 4. And then out through the mouth. Exhaling longer than you inhale. Last breath. Breathing in through the nose. holding for a count of 4, and then exhaling a little longer. Feel the energy in your heart of all the love that you have given for your child. You know, maybe the love for your family connection with your partner, the whole experience. Feel that love in your heart. Feel the other hand on your belly. Just honor who you are. Just try to feel yourself. How do you feel in your body? And think about the list. Run through the list in your mind. I did all these things, 150%, and look at the amazing things I was able to do the way I wanted. And really just embrace yourself, be present with yourself, have your hands there, and keep doing that deep breathing and focus on all the positivity, all the love, all the joy, all the laughter. And keep breathing, keep focusing, and keep doing this exercise until you feel that completion. And sometimes when we're struggling with finding our identity, when our children are, becoming adults, are adults, this can help really get you present within who you are and feeling the completion of all the amazing things you did as a parent. And visualize that kid succeeding the ways they want to within their lives. And then sometimes we need to promise ourselves, I will visit the kid all the time. And I recently told my kid that. I was like, you know what? I just decided that we will visit all the time, as much as possible, and sometimes I might fly you out, if we live in a different space, but make it okay. Like if you're feeling like, wow, I really need to relocate, but my kid, or the kid goes off to college, right? So you're like far apart from each other, make it okay. And just say, you know what, it doesn't break our heart connection that I can visit them. I can do what I know I need to do, because finding that knowledge of what we need to do with our life at that point to really feed our own cup, our own sense of being. Maybe we need to relocate. Maybe we need to go on a trip. Maybe we need to not think about what the kid needs in that moment, because they can handle it. What do I need? And I think this is a really huge transition. So sometimes you have to make almost like a promise to yourself to allow yourself, give yourself permission for that new step of saying, let's make an agreement. We'll get together once a month or every couple weeks. And, if we're far, far apart, that we'll visit every, certain period of time. But do something that makes it feel complete in a good way, to where you feel comfortable focusing on, what do I really want to do with my life now? Because I've done that huge job of being a parent, and now I don't know what to do with myself, right? So I think it's really important to complete, to honor it, and to see your kid as empowered and as a whole separate person from yourself, and then focus on your needs. And then from there, you can focus on, if you're married in relationship, how you can come together that way. But finding your own sense of being, your own completion within yourself, like that separation from the situation, is huge. I think it's an identity thing. I think it's an emotional thought process thing. I think it's biologically for women huge. I think even for men it's huge. They feel protective and want to take care of their family, their kids. I think it's a big transition, and really try to focus on, how do I want to move forward for whatever I want to do with my life here out, and really give it some strong consideration. So again, you've been listening to Dynamic Change. My name is Michelle Love, and you can always look up my website, dynamicchange.wellness.com, to look at all the different services I provide for people and the wellness coaching and everything. And this has been a wonderful topic for me. I hope you have enjoyed it, for all the parents in your life, grandparents, whoever it is. And I want to share with you one of the shows we have here at KPCA in Petaluma. The Sports Roost is on Thursdays from 3 to 4 p.m., hosted by Harry Lewis. Petaluma has a rich sports history along with active sporting events and fascinating personalities. Harry brings local sports alive with an eclectic mix of current events and stories from the past, inviting guests into the Roost for the show from all forms of sport and interviews with athletes who grew up in Petaluma or have come here to call it home. Sounds like a fantastic show. I know there's a lot of sports in Petaluma, and so it sounds like that would be really enjoyable. So again, this show is every Wednesday, and it's called Dynamic Change, and I talk about psychological kind of techniques and insights that we can apply to our lives to understand the emotional things that we kind of ride through life. And I love sharing that with everyone. So thank you for joining me. Every show I upload to my YouTube station, Michelle Love with Dynamic Change and Wellness. I'm starting to do a lot of interviews lately with special guests within the wellness field. So you can go there to see all the other shows. And my hats go off to all the amazing parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, everyone that helps be there for a kid within their lives. Thank you for all you do. I look forward to our next show. I hope you're enjoying the beautiful weather outside, and thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye now.